Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be telling you how you can talk to absolutely anyone, and this is just 5 tricks from the book How to Talk to Anyone, 92 Little Tricks for Big Success in Relationships. I really recommend that you go and pick this book up because it's been so informative and helpful for me as someone who has perhaps struggled a little bit with social interaction throughout my life. I've found that these tips are just so easy and accessible to implement into all of your relationships. So the first one that I'm going to get into is something that the author calls what to do not. And basically this is something that we all kind of do when we first meet someone. The first thing that we do is we ask, what do you do? And that is actually really not the right way to go about it if you think about it a bit more deeply. Instead, you should ask, how do you spend your time? And in this way, it allows the person to open up far more freely. When you ask a person, how do you spend your time? This allows them to give so much more information than they would if it was just, oh, what do you do? Or what do you do for work? That's what's implied by what do you do? And so they can talk about their hobbies, their families, their genuine passions that you might be able to actually connect more with. So for example, if they talked about reading, then I would say, I love reading too, and then I could talk more about, what books they enjoy, the genres, the authors, all of those things that could build far more of a connection than just what they do for work. Another reason why this is really good to do is because it can put that person on a spot a little bit if you just purely ask, what do you do? And they might be, for example, unemployed, they might be between jobs, or they might feel that they need to justify what they do. For example, maybe they're a stay-at-home mum, or maybe they're a stay-at-home dad, and therefore feel the need to go, oh, but I do this as well, and not just that, which isn't really fair. A second tip that the author talks about is something called the latest news, don't leave home without it. So this is quite simple and quite, you can understand what it means from the title. So basically, just stay up to date on what is happening around the world. And I know this is far easier said than done. I mean, I'm personally a journalist and I'm trained as a journalist, so for me, keeping on top of news is perhaps a little bit easier than someone else who is juggling a 9-to-5 and a family and everything else that goes with just living life. But this can be quite easy in the fact that just downloading, for example, the BBC app, the CNN app, the Guardian app, or any newspaper that you read, just downloading the app and getting those free notifications on what's happening. And that can be really helpful to ensure that you know what's happening, what's going on. So if anything is brought up, you won't feel out of place, you won't feel like maybe not intelligent enough to know about that specific information or that topic. And this doesn't just have to be like doom and gloom news. That's not really what's fitting, I suppose, to talk about in a conversation. It can be quite a dampener, I suppose. There's lots of sad, horrific stories that are happening all around the world, and that's not necessarily something you might want to bring into a conversation for the first time meeting someone. So something more like, for example, right now the Olympics are happening, and that's something that really the whole world is taking place in. Doing some simple light reading on how many medals that country has won, or a athlete that is really popular, then that can be a really great conversation starter. The next bit of advice that the author gives is something called a flooding smile. So this is used when you first meet someone. So often when you first meet someone, you might do a really big smile, or if there is a whole big group of people, you might automatically do this really big smile to greet everyone. But instead, the author suggests that maybe you should kind of do a little bit of a quieten down smile and instead save this big flooding smile so it comes in later on when you're actually talking to one particular person, or when you're speaking to maybe each person but one-on-one. This means that the person is going to see that smile as just for them and not something that you're kind of giving to absolutely everyone. So in that sense, it's going to feel far more personal when you give that big, lovely, flooding smile when they talk about a particular topic, or when they maybe say a joke and you give that lovely smile that feels like it's just for them. The next piece of advice that the author gives is something called Gra Vine glory. And this is in the way of giving compliments So instead of going straight to a person and giving them a nice compliment, that's great, that's good to give people compliments, but maybe try it with this different hack. So instead of going straight to them, go to the person closest to them. So for example, say this is your boss, maybe go to their personal assistant or someone who's really close to them in that way in your work. You can compliment them on anything, but because you're saying it to the person closest to them, then you can very likely guarantee that that compliment is going to go right back to them. So because you're doing it in this way, the, say for example, boss is going to think, well, this person is saying really nice things behind my back. So if this person is saying really nice things behind my back, then that increases the trust level and the likeness towards the person who was given that compliment in that way. Obviously, because quite often things that you hear behind your back is quite negative, and it's not always great when you hear things behind your back. But if you're hearing good things, then that changes it and makes it completely the opposite. This hack also limits the probability that you could be labelled as maybe a sycophant or an egg-sucking person, as in one of those phrases. Basically someone that sucks up to someone. So you don't want to be labelled as that. No one wants to be labelled as someone who seems to just be like completely sucking up to a person. No one wants to be that. So instead, if you do it this way, then you drop that label completely. So the final tip that I'm going to give you today is called Echo the Emotion. And this tip is really great because it's basically allowing the person to get all of their emotions out first. So the example that the author gives for this is when a person, most likely in America say, is unwell, they're in pain and they go to a hospital. But the receptionist or the secretary gives them a clipboard asking them to put their insurance details on first without actually asking them what's wrong. However, if this was reversed and the person, the secretary, actually asked, what's wrong? What's happened? Why has this come about? And how do you feel? And all of these questions to actually address the emotions first, then the patient is going to be far more willing and far happier and feel far more comfortable to then give those extra added, usually lengthy details of their insurance or whatever else that might be needed for the secretary receptionist's sake. This allows for the patient or that person in particular to feel respected, to feel like they are actually being listened to, and it's going to create far more of a greater relationship and mean that the receptionist or the secretary is going to get what they need from that person too. Another example that the author gives is when she spoke to her friend about a particular clothing company and how great their trousers were, telling him he should really try them, he should buy them because they're such great quality. And then when he did, they split and it was so embarrassing and so awful. And when he told her this, she rang up that clothing company and told them about this horrible, embarrassing ordeal. And instead, the response that she got was sympathy, was a reaction of, wow, oh my god, that's so bad. I'm so sorry that this happened to you. Of course you'll have a refund. We're so sorry about this, and this is just a horrible ordeal for you and your friend, especially since you recommended us. So the author was quite shocked by this response, and instead she was expecting a big blowout. She was expecting maybe her to say, well, our clothes are the highest quality and we have the best fabrics. This couldn't have happened, you know, you must have done something wrong, it's not us, it's you, type of thing. But instead she was met with this calm response, this calm, sympathetic response, matching that same level of emotion that she was giving, listening to her appropriately, and therefore she was given what she wanted, and she also had some really great customer service from that woman who answered the phone and answered it in that way. So that is everything that I have. Those 5 tips I think are so useful and can be implemented in so many different ways, in so many different conversations with so many different people. I'd love to give you more advice and tips from the book. I thought it was amazing. If you want to read it yourself, I will leave a link down below. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are, and I will speak to you soon. Bye!